Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, I am joined by the amazing Demi Horvat from AirDNA. Welcome to the Accommodation Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Bart. I'm excited to chat.
Same here, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have a really good chat because I met you at VRMA last year, so that was late 2023. We hadn't spoken before, but you were so enthusiastic and so willing to have a chat with a stranger, have a chat with someone from Australia, and kind of share within the STR industry because I know that you are relatively new to this space. I'd love you to introduce yourself and let everybody know what you're doing at AirDNA and how you got there.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm currently the CEO at AirDNA, and it has been maybe an unexpected path into this role. I actually started out my career in consulting. So I was a strategy consultant at BCG and then worked in e-commerce for a couple of years. So I was working at a company called Jet.com that was acquired by Walmart e-commerce. So the similarity, I would say, is growing category, interesting space, and a lot of change, but certainly not short-term rentals. But then made a transition into private equity. And I was working on the private equity operations side. So really working with PE-backed companies to help them grow and improve their operations. And then made the transition from there to AirDNA through Alpine Investors, which is the private equity firm that acquired AirDNA in February of 2022.
Yeah, well, and look, one of the things that you said to me, so one of the things I asked before, I said, like, what is your experience in short-term rentals? And it was really interesting when I joined the short-term rental industry 4 years ago now. I remember I got a lot of feedback from people going, "Oh, you're not from the industry. You don't know what you're talking about." However, when I was 15 years old, I was building websites, building massive businesses, and working with community, working with people. I was involved in the circular economy. I used to be in solar. I understood how to do marketing and branding and how to build businesses. And this whole e-commerce side is invaluable when we think about short-term rentals because we've got the operational side, which is delivering the guest experience and everything. But everything else, the shop front, is down to what AirDNA does and what iBooked Online does. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting. I mean, similarly, coming into the industry from the outside, I think everyone, when they're in that situation, is thinking, how do I get up to speed? How do I learn the way that this industry works? And how do I start adding value? And it has been super interesting to see the places where some of that experience and knowledge, not only from e-commerce, but also from consulting, where you're kind of looking at a bunch of different businesses, looking at a bunch of different industries, kind of helps you bring fresh eyes. And even something like a listing description and the parallel to a product listing page, it's just so clearly similar. There's SEO implications to both. So that has been kind of a nice surprise that I haven't had to start entirely from scratch.
Yeah. And I guess the other really interesting thing with STR is that you have a lot of enterprise size businesses. And actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts just in a second as to what you would consider enterprise, because I've heard between 20 units and above is enterprise. For me, enterprise would be 200 and above. But so you've got these enterprise businesses that have a certain set of problems that you need to solve, which are quite dramatically different to maybe someone that's got that one property or that's got a small property management company. And when we think about e-commerce as well, generally, if we're getting into e-commerce, it's a bit of a bigger business that's doing it. You'll have less kind of mum and dad operators. Yes, you'll have people doing it, but they'll jump onto eBay and all those kind of platforms. So there's a lot of synergy and similarity. Give me your thoughts on enterprise and also that sort of working with smaller clients.
Yeah, I would say the parallel that holds is definitely larger businesses have more resources. And so they're able to do things like have tools that make their lives easier. They can buy data, they have teams that can actually analyze that data And when you're a smaller operation, whether it's being a smaller mom and pop manufacturer that has items that they want to sell, or someone who has one property and is trying to do everything by hand, I think it's just a matter of how much work you as an individual have to do, and that kind of manual startup type of work where it's just an individual powering through versus being able to leverage tools to streamline things, make it easier, that I definitely see in both industries.
Yeah, yeah. And enterprise, what does AirDNA qualify as a quantify, or how do you qualify and quantify a enterprise business?
Yeah, so we think about it more from the perspective of what our business can do for different segments. So when we're talking about our self-service software platform, we're typically talking about smaller operations that have, say, less than 10 properties. And then when we're talking about more of our enterprise solutions or the higher power tiers of our product, we sometimes refer to those as enterprise, even though in the industry more broadly, a 10 property manager would not be considered enterprise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that there is necessarily a clear definition that everybody uses. And we definitely look at it through the lens of our business and our offerings.
Yeah, because then I think maybe that's one of the things that I'm trying to get to grips with, because what I love about short-term rentals is that these answers are being written as we speak. Like literally, it's like, what is it? How does it work? And the industry's evolving and changing, and then we're the ones to actually go, actually, this is how it should be structured. It's kind of like the pro host versus the non-pro host. The pro host being a property management company, then you've got a smaller individual host that might do it as an investment on the side. But then I'll guess that even if you're a pro host, then there'll be different levels of delineation in terms of your size, and therefore how many staff you have, what your needs and your requirements are in terms of your tech stack, for example. It's going to look quite a lot different to what a mom and dad operator would have as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, awesome. So now I'm on to I'm so excited for this interview. I really am, because AirDNA, I've always known about the power of data. It's been my lifeblood and everything that I do in my jobs where I've been a revenue manager, just looking at the data, looking at the numbers, and trying to figure out how to pull different levers to make things work. So I've always loved the idea of AirDNA and what the product actually offers to the industry. And I'm like, this is awesome. And the possibilities are endless. The other thing that's really cool is that I know that AirDNA under your leadership has been shifting, changing, and just basically changing. You're a bit of a chameleon, just changing all the time. How where is AirDNA now, and what is sort of your strategy going forward from where you might have been in the past?
Yeah, so a couple things that I would mention there. One is you're absolutely right. We've been making a ton of changes, and a couple of the most notable, and then I'll get into kind of how the strategy is changing and how we're thinking about the future. But at the end of last year, we relaunched our AirDNA app, that is kind of the product that the majority of folks who are familiar with AirDNA were using. And we made a lot of really big changes there. The biggest one, based on customer feedback, was instead of having people sign up for the product and have to subscribe to an individual market, we made the change to actually allow access to every single global market with every single AirDNA subscription, including our free tier. So that's been a huge change in the business. It was so structurally different to the way that we approached customers in the past, because in the past, when you were using AirDNA, you already had to have a hypothesis around what market you wanted to invest in, because you had to have that idea before you bought a subscription. And we've made that change to basically enable people to look across different markets and identify which ones are attractive for what they're trying to do, rather than locking them in or limiting them to whatever market they were initially thinking would be an interesting one for them. So that's one piece. And I would say that's an example of a place where we've really been investing in and doubling down on what we're already good at. And we're already good at supporting people with their market research to understand what markets are attractive to invest in. and also helping them understand if an individual property would be a good investment and how much it could earn as a short-term rental. The direction that we're headed, in addition to kind of bolstering and continuing to invest behind those things, is when I think about the broader workflow. If you're investing in and operating short-term rentals, the stages of the journey that you're on, obviously sometimes in different order, or maybe with some steps kind of having more emphasis than others, you're doing your market research, you're figuring out if the property is an attractive one. If you've made the investment in a property, you then have to operate that property and find success with that property and your business. You have to optimize. That's things like we were talking about with listing optimization. And then you have to be doing ongoing analysis to understand what's happening in the market, how you're doing versus the competition, all of that. And AirDNA in the past has been really strong at the beginning stages of that workflow and the customer journey around research and investment. And we really haven't had anything to support, well, I shouldn't say anything. We really haven't had much to support with the operations, the optimization, and then certainly we support with analysis, but not kind of plugged into the rest of what a customer would be doing. So we've made a lot of progress in that operational part of the journey. And I'm excited to talk about the acquisition that we recently made that is kind of us edging into that area. And that I think is a better experience for our customers because we're able to offer them something that's seamless, that meets more of their needs without having to pop around to a bunch of different solutions.
Yeah, and you can kind of, for lack of a better way of saying it, hold their hand along that whole journey. And really, it's great because it means that you guys understand that whole journey way better. And it kind of actually, I think, for AirDNA, makes you guys look at yourselves as well and just go, what parts, what problems are we solving along that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we talk about what we're going to prioritize versus deprioritize. It's really thinking about how to make all of those stages easier for our customers and make it that seamless, kind of simple experience. And a lot of our customers are kind of on that journey where maybe they started with a smaller portfolio and then they're growing and professionalizing. So we want to be there for that.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm going to come back to the thoughts around the acquisition that you guys had of Uplisting. But before I go there, I want to talk a little bit about that start of the journey. And that was kind of, for me, when I got into STR, I'm like, how cool is this tool? You can actually go and scan different areas and scan different locations, figure out what your competition looks like, figure out what occupancy looks like, figure out how much you might be making from a property if you were to invest in a certain area. I did come across the challenge of having different clients ask me questions about their particular area, and I wasn't able to get that data, even no matter how I kind of tried to jig the plans, because it was like, oh well, it's going to work here, but now if you're on the other side of the country, it's not going to work, let alone the other side of the world. So, I mean, there's benefits of being able to compare different markets. So, if you're going to invest in one market or the other, it's just fascinating to look at different countries as well to see, what the average daily rate is in one country over the next. I think it's a very smart move to open it up, and you might argue that from a profitability point, that it's not, we're not making as much money. But on the other hand, what you're doing is you're making your product potentially more sticky with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, the experience that you described was described by so many customers, and it's something we heard so often. I would say that the restricting a subscription to an individual market was probably the top constructive feedback that we were getting from customers. And I think we had to make the change because we were preventing users of AirDNA from using the app in the way that would provide them the most value, because so many people were coming to us trying to figure out which market should I invest in, and we were limiting their ability to actually do that for a structural reason. So of course, rebuilding the platform and changing pricing and packaging is a big undertaking and is really hard, but it made sense to do it because it's in service of helping customers use the tool in the way that they want to use the tool and not limiting their exploration. And I think also, as now an advocate for this industry, even though I'm newer to it, it is that kind of inspiration that I think a lot of people have when they're entering this industry, where you don't just want to look in your backyard. You also might want to look in Barcelona, because who knows, maybe you would love to have a property in Barcelona, an excuse to go there from wherever you're based. And so now we're enabling people to do that, which is really exciting.
Yeah, just basically to see if it's even the dream is feasible.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So yeah, I appreciate that. One of the other features that I love the most is seeing who the top competitors are in the area. So who the other top property management companies are, and kind of scanning around the different areas and getting an idea. And what I do with that is I actually not use that to figure out who my competitors are, but to figure out what they're actually doing and what they're doing right and what I could potentially do to improve on their offering.
Yeah, we see a ton of people using the tool for that reason. And the other kind of two things that I would say about that is a lot of people are looking at other top listings in their market to understand what are the things that I could be doing with my property that would help my property perform better. One example being amenities, maybe getting some inspiration on photography, seeing how other people are describing their listing and stuff like that. Um, and then all of the metrics associated with competitors in terms of whether their properties are getting booked, how they're pricing their property. So I think that competitive intel is incredibly important. And it's only increasingly important as this industry gets more mature and as competition has increased, which is definitely something we saw in 2023 and prior years that I think we'll probably end up talking more about, since it's been
Yeah,
such a big topic.
yeah. Look, and I think like I want to talk about data a little bit because it's the fundamentals of what we do, and I don't want to go into a pricing discussion as well, though, because that's really quite deep and quite complicated. But one of the things that's very important for people to know is, let's say we're doing our research, and let's say we're not using a good tool, we don't have access to good data, or we look at data and we think it's great data, but we're not sure. If we go onto one of the OTAs, we can quite often see the pricing of what people are charging in a particular area, and then we can make some deductions. We can go, well, all right, they're charging $200 a night. So we go 365 nights a year. Maybe we'll get an occupancy of 60% across the year. Maybe it'll be 80, maybe it'll be 40. We're kind of guessing as to what the occupancy is going to be. We can't see the high season and the low season, but so we can make these assumptions and then try to come up with a figure as to what we think a property is going to bring in. The issue with looking just at the OTAs is that we're not actually seeing kind of what's booked and what hasn't booked, so we don't really get a real sense of occupancy. And using data like what you have, you can get a lot closer to the truth.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And what I would think about if you're someone who's trying to back into this data just by looking at the OTA websites, it's really, really, really hard to do that. And it's really, really, really time consuming. And so, what we do at AirDNA is we have a massive team of data scientists, data engineers, people with PhDs in various areas of data, the economy, sorry, economists, et cetera. And we're doing so much of that number crunching and doing so much of that clarifying of the underlying data in order to bring the insights to the forefront, so that you don't have to spend all of that time kind of creating the data set yourself. So I very much am a believer in don't reinvent the wheel. And I think for people who are trying to get into this industry, the amount of time and work that goes into doing what I think everyone needs to be doing, which is doing that level of in-depth analysis to understand how their business might perform and how others are performing, we can just cut that time short and give people more confidence in making those types of decisions because of everything that we're doing behind the scenes to make sure that data is good.
Yeah, absolutely. So focus on the things that you're good at, but also if you're a smaller business, then you'll have many different hats that you're going to be wearing. So be it, motivating a team, creating values for your company, to do your marketing, your branding, to paying your owners, to looking after a guest. I keep saying dealing with the guest, but it's completely the wrong language.
Taking care
Taking
of.
care of a guest. So we're looking after all these things within our business, and I think the primary thing here is that you get data and then you've got good data. Can you explain to people a little bit about what I mean by that, by good data, like just data and how you make it, what actually good data is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few things. I think one element of what we offer at AirDNA is we're covering every listing that's listed on Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com. So there are a ton of data providers out there, and some of them are great. I think one of our advantages is we actually cover all of the properties, not just properties that are in a certain area or just professionally managed properties, et cetera. So it's that kind of breadth of the data set that is really useful. The other element is we have multiple different data sources. So we're scraping data from the OTAs, and that gives us that really helpful breadth covering the globe as far as short term rentals. We also bring in partner data and we also bring in first party data. And those additions, in addition to the breadth, give us a really high degree of depth and accuracy. So when you think about the intersection of those three things, the breadth, depth, and accuracy of the data, I think that's what really sets AirDNA apart. And it's super, super important for people if you're using data to make this impactful of a decision that affects your business, affects your ability to grow your business. I think doing that diligence and really understanding how the data that you're using comes together, understanding how the provider that you're using defines the metric that you're basing a decision off of is super, super important. And one of the things that I'm proud of at AirDNA is we really make a huge effort to be providing that type of education and informing people of the way that they should use data in order to be successful. So we're trying to give people the insight, but we also want people to be really savvy users of data because we think that's better for everyone and means that more people can find success in this industry.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly important. I mean, the data is always going to be important no matter what stage of your business that you're at. But if you're getting started, data is 100% key. I remember the first property that I bought, I had a mentor, and he just said, Bart, if you get the first one wrong, you're in so much trouble because you're not going to have a point to leverage to then build your portfolio and build your business because you got the first one wrong. And now you're going to find that you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years behind because you got that one wrong. Data helps you make a more structured decision to actually get you there. And I think this kind of goes back to the point that I started with is that I'm excited. I was always excited about AirDNA and what it has to offer because of the data and because of what you can actually do with it to make strategic decisions, to figure out your business. But I think if we even look at now all the different pricing tools and that are out there and companies that are making huge strides, it's the number one thing that I kind of, when I have a friend of mine say, "Oh, I've just set up a short term rental," I'm like, "Oh, have you got a pricing tool?" I don't even say PMS. I'm like, "Hey, have you got a pricing tool?" They're like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the one piece that's data driven where you as a human being, you're not actually capable of making those decisions because you just can't process that amount of information." From your new to AirDNA, but you're not new to e-commerce, you're not new to data. What are your thoughts about where the industry is for short-term rental now in terms of the data that we use and what's going to happen over the next few years?
Yeah. Sorry, I can't help myself from responding to one of the things that
Yeah,
you said
sure.
before
I
that
waffled a
question,
bit.
which was no, no, it's great. When you were saying it's so important not to get that first investment wrong, I think you're 100% right. And one of the things that we hear from people all the time is, of course, we hear the stories where people say, I bought this property because I used AirDNA and I knew that this was going to be a great market. I knew how much I could expect to earn, and that's how much I earned, if not more. And those are fantastic stories. But there are also really fantastic stories where people say, I was about to pull the trigger. I was so excited to make this investment. And then I signed up for AirDNA, took a look at the property, and decided not to. And I'm so grateful that I didn't because now I understand that it probably would not have been a success because now I'm more familiar with the industry. And I think those types of decisions can be devastating. So it's not only powering the decisions where an investment is made and you move forward, it's also preventing you from making the wrong choices.
Yeah. And,
Um,
it's
oh, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. We'll get back to that main question as well. I mean, like it becomes a tool like this as well. It kind of becomes one that's not an option. Like you can't not have it. Like once you get to a certain size of a business, you don't have an option but to get a PMS. Right now, do you have to get a price tool? That's optional. But kind of if you're trying to make an investment decision, you need the data. I mean, you can go blind on gutted intuition, but you really need to know what's going on and get a level of accuracy. Now, let's go back to the other one. Where we are now, where it was with AirDNA and the data, and where we're going to, and its importance, and how it's going to change the industry.
Yeah, I would say the direction I think we're headed, and I think frankly most industries are headed in this direction, but data is becoming more and more important, and there's more and more of it being produced by the different software tools that people are using in order to power their businesses. So I think what's really exciting and kind of on the horizon is, and part of the excitement for us around the acquisition of Uplisting is how can we be bringing that data into people's operational tools like a PMS? How can we be improving and continuing to invest in our smart rates pricing solution because we have this very, very powerful underlying data set where we're covering the globe and we have many, many, many years of historical data, both pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. So I think there's just a larger scale of data that's available, and the winners will be people who can figure out what to do with that data or who are using the tools that make that data usable for them. And I think that's a challenge that it's interesting because we talk about it a lot, even just from the conversations that we have with our investors. But with the amount of data that is out there, and the amount of resources and processing power and expertise that you need in order to make something usable out of it, I think being able to find the solutions that give you the kind of takeaway version of it versus trying to do it yourself is the direction that we're going to see a lot of people go. And data is becoming more and more embedded in all of the different stages of that workflow, not just being something that you use once, decide to make your investment, and then you're good. You don't need any ongoing data.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like whoever can be the first to rationalize that data and really use it most effectively is going to be one of the winners that comes out on top. What I find super surprising, Demi, and this is a conversation over a few beers at some stage, but um, we look at all these data points and people building all these sort of tools to process AI or use AI to process it and to sort of create this real world interaction between the data and what people can actually use. But the in between right now, it's completely broken. I've seen some of the biggest companies out there that just don't have a great way of getting the data and going, all right, this is what it all means. Just do it for this person. This person doesn't like right now. It's like we can do these two parts, but in between, you're asking the user to go in and try to figure out all these data points, do what a data scientist should be doing to figure it out and just make it work. There's a massive gap, especially using AI tools. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes there. Now, I'm conscious of our time starting to quickly dwindle, and I did want to talk about uplisting and a little bit of the strategy around that. And it's just such a big development. I mean, you guys got massive media coverage that this is something that AirDNA had decided to do, and quite an ambitious strategic shift because there's also a fair amount that you guys could have doubled down on in terms of the AirDNA product, in terms of what it does there. But now you're saying, actually, let's see what problems we can solve across the whole industry. Tell me the journey through to acquiring uplisting and what the vision is and how this will benefit owners or short-term rental owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked at the beginning of this conversation a little bit about having sticky solutions where you kind of have the solution that people need in the long term. And that definitely is a key driver of the strategy around acquiring uplisting and what I talked about that workflow where We just want to have more to offer and stay with our customers along the journey and the path that they're on in short-term rentals. So that's kind of the vision for why we made the acquisition. I think what it opens up for us and what I get really excited about, and some of the things that you'll start to see us come out with over the next several months, is larger professional operations, like you also talked about. I would say hopefully pretty much all of them are using a PMS. I know some of them aren't,
Yeah.
but they probably should be using one, and hopefully the majority are. And that's fantastic. And uplisting is a really great solution for a lot of those businesses. And it's a really, really fully featured, robust, and most importantly of all, reliable product that can serve those larger property managers. The part of the market that I think is underserved, and what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about e-commerce and the small kind of mom and pop shops and the folks who have one property in the short-term rental industry, those people are largely not able to use these tools that would make their lives easier, save them time, make their business more efficient, and help them succeed. And so what I think is really exciting is so many of our customers at AirDNA, although we kind of run the gamut even to people who have really large portfolios and are growing from 200 to 250, but a lot of people come to AirDNA when they don't have a property and they're looking to invest in their first property, or maybe they have two properties and are trying to invest in their third. I think being able to provide them a solution that is a PMS solution that saves them time, drives efficiency, helps them succeed, and ultimately grow their portfolios, and is something that they can afford and is simple enough to use when you have a smaller portfolio and you don't need every bell and whistle, is super, super exciting. So that's kind of the direction that I am excited that we're headed from a product perspective. And it's going to take us a little while to build some of that out because we're going to be figuring out what exactly we want it to look like. But my vision would be, if you're someone who has two properties, you bought your first property using an AirDNA subscription, now you have your second, we're going to make it easy for you to have a PMS solution that meets your needs for a property portfolio of only two properties, and is something that you can set up and use very, very easily, even as you're kind of learning and growing in this industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, the great thing with AirDNA, you guys already have a community. You have advocates of the business. You can demonstrate how great you are at using data and that sort of thing. And that's one thing that I think I would love to see. Like, if I was to be creating my perfect PMS, is leveraging those data points, because you've got a lot of communication tools, and I've actually seen some really unbelievable workflows for guest communication now, like, using AI and using those tools, and the onboarding process. It's just so amazing. But I still feel there's a bit of a lack of the data. So almost like that CRM side, understanding how well the business is tracking, how well it's performing, whether your portfolio is doing well, whether it's not doing well, whether you're like, it's all kind of a bit disjointed. So even if we think about average daily rates, what can we do to improve things, and then you guys could pull in and go, oh, actually you need to put a pool in this property, and then you could double your rates. And there's so many smart suggestions and features that you could add, having access to that whole pool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you'll be excited about something that I have to show you in a couple months' time. So I'll reach back out
Yeah,
so you
please
can get an
do.
early demo.
Please do. And we might have to show everybody else at the same time, though. So hopefully it just won't be me. But
Sure.
um, that's so cool. And so I love the idea of AirDNA becoming more of an end to end solution. Uh, I love that there's that vision of growing the company, and I can see the amount of depth that it's going to add across the board, in terms of the way that you work with clients and help them in their business. I think it will be awesome also to see your success stories and case studies of that end-to-end solution really working in a practical sense. Almost like, hey, do you want to get into the industry? Or, hey, you're in the industry, let us hold your hand along that whole journey. We know what we're doing, and having some experts working with people. I think that's a exciting move, an ambitious move as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of payoff for AirDNA and Uplisting?
I'm excited that you're saying it, not me. Yeah, we already experience that when customers are reaching out to us, often what they're asking is, hey, what market should I invest in? Like, what do I need to be analyzing? How do I make this decision? And we offer support in the form of content that guides people through that. The tool helps them actually find the data points that would help them make those types of decisions. But I think there's so much opportunity for more of that. Here's the way that you would go about this, and the way that we would recommend that you go about it as experts who also have the data that you could then use to validate that this process is kind of what you should follow. So definitely excited about that direction in the future, and I'm glad that you're excited too.
Amazing. Look, I we have to wrap up. I can't tell you how grateful I am for your time. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're so approachable. Like literally, come up to you and say, "Hey, this is who I am." And a lot of it's like that. You don't know anyone until you meet them, and then you talk to them. Oh, you're actually doing all this stuff. So I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next steps are in Uplisting's journey, AirDNA's journey, but also your personal journey, Demi. I think it's exciting. I can see how talented you are and how ambitious you are. So I'm excited to see what you bring to short-term rentals as a whole. Is there anything that we can do for you, and what's the best way to contact AirDNA or yourself? What's the best way for people to engage with you?
Yeah, I would say what everyone can do for us is get into the product, give us your feedback, tell us what you think. We're developing new things really quickly. And as I said, we made the biggest change to our product in the last several years based on customer feedback. So if you want your voice heard, please reach out to us and let us know what you want to see. We have a Facebook group that folks can join. We have a podcast, the STR Data Lab, that you should listen to. Our website is airdna.co, and we're on all social media. So you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm sure I'm missing some, but
So good.
yeah,
It's so
reach out
good.
to us.
Yeah, the list is pretty huge. That's awesome. Look, thank you so much once again. I appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of your evening, and folks, if you are listening on podcast, and make sure you leave us some of those stars, give us a review. Let us know if you've got any questions below, and I'll make sure that either we get Demi answering or one of her team. I like and subscribe. Let's do some of that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you next week.